Thank you so much for coming. Tonight is the last time I'm going to perform this show. Yes, sir. Look at this. Oh, my God. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for coming. This is a very special night. I've had the good fortune of traveling to many places because, there's not many Portuguese comedians out in the world doing this. In fact, I'm the only one. So wherever I go, anywhere, I try to be a good ambassador for the country. I've traveled all over. Whenever I meet new people, I ask them about us. I'm like, what are the stereotypes? What do you think about Portugal? And everybody I talk to is like, I don't think about Portugal. I have never thought about Portugal. One guy is like, it's my favorite part of Brazil. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Brazil used to be a Portuguese colony. Do you know how bad of a colonizer you've got to be? For people to think your country is a city in a country used to colonize, that's not happening to anybody else. No one's going around, what's my favorite part of England? Bangladesh. I always start, whenever I go, I start by saying I am Portuguese because often people don't believe me. And I understand, they're like, Portuguese, you sound American, and you look like a lesbian. Yep, that's the sound of the people going, now that he says it, I see it. I'm aware of this, which is why I changed my haircut, but now I just look like I'm transitioning. But nobody knows which way. Now, often people ask me, why do I do stand-up in English? And I do stand-up in English because English is my happy language, right? I feel like a different person in English. Everybody feels different in different languages. We connect with things differently. In English, I feel more like myself. I feel happier. I feel lighter. I feel more confident because all my trauma happened in Portuguese. So I get to be whoever I want. It's like being in the witness protection program, You get to just choose what you want to be. Even with expressing emotions, language is different. I've never been able to tell I love you to my parents in my own language. But here, in English, I get out of a taxi and I'm like, thanks, love you, There's no way. Same reason why I've never dated someone from my own country. Because I can't have dirty talk in my own language. It's not right. Feels a bit rapey, actually. But in English, it's like, it doesn't feel like it's me who's saying the things. It feels like somebody else, and that guy is like, I want to wear your ass like a mask. Dude, do you think I could say that in Portuguese? My mother speaks that language, We're Catholic people, for God's sakes. Can't do that. I've always dated people different nationalities. I used to date a German girl, right? Now, we're very different, right? I remember even when we're having that conversation about what are you into, what sexual fetishes and stuff. I was like, what's your thing? And she was like, oh, my thing is paying taxes. And I was like, my God, baby. I've never tried it. And she would like to do this thing where she would once a month, we'd go on a special date night where she'd go, let's go to a restaurant, but let's not even look at the prices. Let's just be present in the moment. I'd say yes. And one time we were in Amsterdam, we did this. Give me a cheer, you've been to Amsterdam? Yeah? What was your favorite thing about Amsterdam, my man?
The Penis Museum.
The Penis Museum.
Just to the right of the station.
Just to the right of the station. I like that no one asked for directions, but you were like, the people will want to know. You can't miss it. It's a big museum, right? Because I've asked this to many, many people. The first time I asked this question, I was like, what was your favorite thing about Amsterdam? This guy goes, the canals. I'm like, okay, great. Second time I asked, what was your favorite thing about Amsterdam? This guy goes, oh, the museums. Third time I asked, it was a couple. I was like, what was your favorite thing about Amsterdam? The guy gets off his seat and he goes, bro. And he looks at his girlfriend and he's like, the canals. We were at this restaurant, right? And in the middle of the meal, my girlfriend, she said, I've got a surprise for you. I've been learning Portuguese. And I was like, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. So we're having this candlelit dinner, glass of wine. And then for the first time ever, she looks at me in the eyes and says, André, te amo. And I'm like, wow, that's Spanish. You Nazi bitch. And so we eat, right? We eat. The bill comes. It was 1,200 euros. Yeah. I think the moment I got that bill, somewhere my father had like, do you know how they say mothers have a sixth sense for when their kids are in danger? Fathers have a sixth sense for when their kids make poor financial decisions. They can feel it in their bones. He's waking up going like, you just fucked up. I know it. So I'm at the restaurant. Guy brings the bill, looks at me, and he goes, is it going to be cash or card, sir? And I'm there looking at it, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to have to suck your dick. That's the only way out of here. My girlfriend was like, how much is it? I'll pay half. And I'm like, all right, you work the balls and I'll tickle the shaft. And she actually ended up paying the bill. And then at the end, we got other answers. She goes, oh, look at this. Germany bailing out Portugal again. And that pissed me off. And we started fighting. But because, we fight in English, like I love fighting in English, right? I love it. Because I am not emotionally attached to this language. So you could say whatever you want to me. She could be like, you know what? I don't respect you as a man. I've been cheating on you. You got a small dick. And I'm like, this is not a real language to me. This is the language from the movies, okay? Which is, by the way, that's how I learned English, by watching TV movies. Anybody else?
Yeah.
The poor people in the house. Yes, sir. I learned English by watching Baywatch. Do you remember Baywatch? Sick show. Listen, growing up, I was obsessed with America. I really wanted to go to America. And for me, Baywatch represented everything that America was. Because Baywatch is a show about a group of lifeguards. But when the sea is calm, they also solve murders. And I love that. They could do anything. Bodies rock up to shore, homicide detectives confused, Pamela Anderson's like, I got this, trust me. Trust me, I'm a lifeguard. Somehow, they would never have shoes on, no notepads, no computers, solve every case. The criminal, always in the 100 meters of beach they happen to patrol. And I love that. I was lucky to do that because so many countries don't have that. Like, I've got a very good Spanish friend, right? And in Spain and in France, for example, everything's dubbed, right? And once I was talking to my Spanish friend, and I was like, so what's your favorite movie? And he goes, El Taxista. And so I Googled it, and it was Taxi Driver. And I was like, oh my God, great film. Robert De Niro. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? I don't see anybody else here, so you gotta be talking to me. And he goes, I've never heard that. And I realize he's never heard Robert De Niro. What he knows is an actor in a voiceover booth going, 3, 2. ¿Estás hablando conmigo? ¿Estás hablando conmigo? Es que no veo nadie más aquí, entonces es que debes estar hablando conmigo. And this guy went, what a performance. One of the finest actors of our generation should win el Oscar. And the French, they do this as well. I remember once I was in a hotel room in Paris, and I was just scrolling through the TV, and Scarface is on. And I love Scarface. It's one of my favorite movies. And the big scene's about to come on. You know, Al Pacino, Tony Montana, you know, say hello to my little friend. Great. But this is dubbed in French. So when the guy goes to shoot, it just says, dis bonjour à mon petit ami. And I'm like, oh, you've made Al Pacino gay. So ever since I was young, I was obsessed with America. I wanted to go there, you know, the American dream. It's the only country that's got dream attached to it. Nobody else has this. You've never heard someone say, man, I want me a piece of that Polish dream. You know what they say? The land of opportunity, Gdansk. The Americans, they export the idea of dreaming, they export movies, they export culture, right? Portuguese, dude, we export cork. You know, and sadness. And Catholicism. Do you know what I mean? It's not rock and roll. Like, do you know how many things you gotta not have as a country to bring up cork? Like, I travel a lot. A lot of the times people don't know what cork is. And I'm like, yoga mats, cork. Bottles of wine, cork. Small towns in Ireland, cork. Like, especially now, right? We're in war times. Every country's trying to do the best they can, right? The Dutch are giving away anti-war defense missiles. The Germans are giving away billions of dollars in aid, right? Zelensky, he came to Portugal, and we were like, how are you doing for cork, brother? Are your missiles properly sealed? Here to help. Let me ask you, anyone here grew up Catholic? Yeah? Got a few fans of JC? The big dog himself. Shout out. Yeah, I grew up Catholic as well, but I'm not particularly Catholic. My relationship with the church is I don't go there, but I wear a cross just in case the whole thing is true. But I grew up, my grandma was a very Catholic woman. She was the type of woman as well that like believed everything was the devil's work, you know? Anything that happened, she was like, I would walk out the door, she's like, watch out, the devil, he's out there. And he's hard at work. Literally anything that happened in our lives, she blamed the devil. One time, we were stuck in traffic, and she was like, this is the devil's work. And I was like, we're stuck in traffic because the Pope's in town. I would argue this is the Lord's work. Yeah? And she was an old school grandma as well. She gave me 50 euros for Christmas every year for 20 years. 20 years, always 50 euros. Not taking inflation into account at all. Always with the same little card that said, now don't spend this money on temptation, okay? And I'm 18. I will spend it exclusively on temptation. So when I was 18, I said to my father, I'm gonna go to America. I wanna be a big star. I got a little voice inside my head that's telling me I could be as big as Cork. Call me crazy, call me a dreamer, but I was like, one day they'll say Cork and André De Freitas in the same sentence. So I said to my father, I'm gonna go to America. And my dad goes, what if it doesn't work? And I say, but what if it does? And it didn't. Two weeks in, I'm sleeping in a rental car. I arrived in America, New York City. Man, I was excited. I mean, I was like, it's no Gdansk, but man, I get to Times Square and there's all the billboards and it just felt like, oh my God, this is the place. And I'm standing there and then I get a tap on my shoulder and I turn around and there's a small, homeless, toothless man who looks at me and just says, do you think you're better than me because you've got all your teeth? I didn't say anything, and he's like, so? And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, it's just nothing in my life has ever prepared me for this interaction. And I was like, well, I know, I don't think I'm better than you because I've got all my teeth. And he goes, damn straight. Because I got a gold tooth in the back of my mouth. It's my life savings. I'm saving it for an emergency. And I stupidly asked a follow-up question. I was like, where do you live? And he goes, that is my tent. And I'm like, the emergency is here, sir. Cash the tooth. To which he goes, oh, you're trying to buy my tooth? And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to buy your tooth. And he goes, okay, $1,000. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to buy your tooth. Right? And he goes, okay, $750. I was like, I don't want to buy your tooth. And then he gets up real close and he goes, $500 and a hand job. And I, again, stupidly asked a follow-up question because I was confused. Who's giving or taking the hand job as if somehow that would change the amount of interest I would have in this man's gold tooth? And then he spits in his hand. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a toothless person spit, but man, it's a lot of fucking saliva, you know? And he goes, whatever gets the deal done. I know. Long story short, I bought a tooth. We went over to his tent. I dropped my pants, and I was like, dis bonjour à mon petit ami. Like, as soon as this happened, I called my family to tell them, like, what just happened. And I get off the phone, another guy comes up to me, and he goes, what's that language you're speaking? I said, oh, it's Portuguese. He goes, Portuguese? Well, look around. We are in the United States of America. You understand? In this country, we speak Spanish. Then he walked away with his red Trump hat that said, Vamos a hacer América grande otra vez. I remember one time, right, I had to get on this subway, because the homeless people in New York, they live on the subway because it's 24 hours a day. So one day I had to get on the subway at 3 o'clock in the morning. I get in, and as soon as I get into the carriage, I realize it's just crazy homeless people there. The doors close. As soon as the train starts moving, the guy who's sitting in front of me gets up, starts yelling at me in a made-up devil language, foam coming out of his mouth, his eyes rolling to the back of his head, and I was like, oh my God, this dude is the devil. My grandmother was right. I shouldn't have spent all that money on temptation. And he starts yelling at me. I don't understand, and I'm so scared this guy's gonna kill me that I'm thinking fight or flight. And I thought, maybe if he thinks I'm also crazy, he won't hurt me. But I don't know how to speak made-up devil tongue. So I just started speaking Portuguese. So I started thinking, what's the most complicated word I know in Portuguese that would sound scary to somebody who doesn't understand the language? I don't know if anyone here has ever been in a situation where you're scared for your life, but you think, my best chance of getting out of this alive is by yelling out the word proctologist in a foreign language. So I start screaming this at the guy. And he's kind of like backing down, right? And he ends up sitting down, and I'm great. With all of this screaming, another homeless man in the carriage woke up. And from the bottom of the carriage, he wakes up, walks over to me, looks me in the eyes, and says to me in Portuguese, dude, you don't need a proctologist. You need a fucking exorcist. Now, I'm totally broke, and I've only managed to network with the escaped inmates of Gotham Asylum. So I have to come home. And when I go home, I had to go live with my family. Now, I grew up in a very small house. Small house, my family isn't rich. Small house, the nicest thing we had was like a chandelier, right? That was our nice thing. And the people living in that small house was me, my brother, my mom, my dad, my two grandmothers who had Alzheimer's, my grandfather, and my uncle who's schizophrenic. My two grandmothers, they have Alzheimer's, and they each believed they were living in the 50s. One of them believed she was living in Mozambique, where my father was born. The other one believed she was back in her house, but neither of them knew who the other one was. So every time they would cross paths in this tiny apartment, which was about 15 times a day, they would go, "Who are you? And what are you doing in my house?" And the other one would go, "No, no, no, who are you? And what are you doing in my house?" I thought I knew all the white people in Mozambique. Now imagine my other grandmother's surprise, because she would go, "I'm in Mozambique?" My brother's walking in from the beach, tan. She's like, "Oh, look, one of the locals." I think sort of Portuguese women, Greek women, Spanish women, Italian women, fucking tough. They are tough women. My grandma has been almost dying for about 10 years now. She started dying when the first Fast and Furious came out. That woman has outlived Paul Walker. So very often I'd get phone calls from my parents saying, "Listen, your grandma's taking a turn for the worse. Can you fly in, say your goodbyes?" Yeah, I'd fly in. I would say my goodbyes. I would fly back out. They would call me, "Good news, she made it." And I'm like, "That bitch. This is killing me. I can't afford this." The last time I went over, right, they were like, "Listen, she's been non-responsive for like 4 days. This is it." I go back. I say my goodbyes. I'm kind of there. All of a sudden, wakes up, grabs my hand, looks me in the eyes, and says, "I don't think this is my time yet." And I'm like, "Let go." She's like, "But the light is so far away." Well, start walking, okay? I can't do this anymore. There's no miles on Ryanair, you know? It's really tough to live with family. Really tough. Like, growing up, I had to share a room with my grandfather. So I didn't discover masturbation until I was 16 years old. Yeah, because there was no space in my house, no privacy for me to discover my own body. I had to wait for my grandfather to die to start masturbating, which, trust me, is a sentence I never thought I would say either. I'll tell you right now, his funeral, mixed feelings for me. The man was going, I was coming. My uncle's schizophrenic, right? And so he hears voices in his head, but he's not like an aggressive schizophrenic. The voices aren't like, burn the house down when everybody's asleep kind of voices. He believes he can speak telepathically to objects that have an electric current. Only objects that have an electric current, right? Because I once asked him if he could speak to the living room table, to which he said, a table? What am I, crazy? My parents would say, hey, just so you know, your uncle is going through one of his crises. He started talking to the office desk lamp. They've been talking for 3 days now. A few days later, I checked back in. I was like, how is he? And my mom's like, well, he's better in a way. He's now dating the lamp. And I was like, he's dating the office desk lamp? And I couldn't believe it because we had that beautiful chandelier. I'm like, if you're gonna date a lamp, don't settle, bro, you know? Believe in yourself. Go for the big dog. My uncle's nicest, kindest, sweetest person I know, but my parents used to leave me alone with him when I was growing up, which I think is very irresponsible. Because I remember I'd get home and I'd be like, where are my parents? And he goes, oh, your parents are out for dinner, but don't worry, the 7 of us are gonna have a great time. Now, I'll tell you the most interesting thing about him dating the lamp, Rita, that was her name, by the way, is that him and Rita had a horrible relationship. They were always fighting. The whole thing was on and off, really. Has anyone here ever lived with something that is so weird, but because you live with it, it just becomes normal to you? Like, I'm walking past his bedroom. He's screaming at the lamp, screaming. I imagine she's screaming back, but it's so normal to me at this point that in my head, I'm like, well, it's your fault you were talking to that slut microwave for 3 hours. Every now and again, you would have lucid days, right? And one of his lucid days, I asked him, what was your life like before this illness? And he said, I traveled the world, I met many people, I had a great life, and I fell in love. I loved this Asian woman very much. And it was very sad to hear that because now he doesn't have a life. He hasn't had a life for 30 years. He's so heavily medicated, he can't live a life. And so we thought we wanted to do something nice for him, us, the family. So the whole family got together, and for his birthday, we got him a Chinese lantern. For a while, it was great. And then one day, his medication changed. He could no longer hear the voice. So he could no longer speak to Rita or the Chinese other one. And so, one day we were like, we're gonna turn this lantern into a sky lantern. So the whole family goes downstairs, we light it up, and there's the whole silence, right? Until we hear my grandmother say, oh, look, the beautiful lights of Mozambique. And there was like a general sense of melancholy, right? That's the thing, that's our sadness, that's the Portuguese sadness, what we have, right? This is a difficult thing to explain if you're not Portuguese. Like my mother would say, saudade is the pain of absence. Means there's something missing in your heart, right? It could be a past relationship, it could be your home country, anything, right? There's just something is missing. And that's difficult to explain. Imagine you're a retired homicide detective. And you've had a great career. You've solved every case except one. But that one case, it haunts you. You think about it all the time. Even though you're retired, you got a little office in your basement and you're trying to put the pieces together. You got the paperwork, you got the board with the red lines, trying to put all things together, right? And he knows that if he finds that missing piece, he will find inner happiness. That is Saudade. That board, cork. That's right. Fucking everywhere, dude. But it's an interesting thing because I've always been told ever since I was a kid, I was like, oh, Saudade, this sadness, it belongs to us. The Portuguese people are very sad people. Whole life I believed this. My whole life I thought, oh, we're the sad people. And then I went to Eastern Europe. And then I was like, now those motherfuckers are sad. I once went on a date with an Eastern European girl and I was like, tell me something fun about you. And she goes, my family's been cursed for generations. And I'm like, great. That was in your Tinder bio, but I missed it. We're actually very similar culturally, right? Portuguese, Eastern Europeans, right? We're both sad, we're both poor. The only difference is that they're sad and the weather's terrible. And we're sad, but like at the beach, you know? Fun sad. So no space for me to live in my own house. And I was like, oh, and that little voice in my head was like, you gotta try again. You gotta go again. So I decide I'm gonna go to London. I tell my father, and he goes, Andre, you went to America and it didn't work. You go to London, what if it doesn't work? And I'm like, but Dad, what if it does? So I moved to London with 400 euros in my pocket. Now, you live in London. By the time the plane landed, I was in debt. I got here, I had to stay in the worst hostel in London, the cheapest hostel in London, literally the last one on TripAdvisor. I got in there and I realized this is the type of hostel where people live in full time. Now, let me tell you something about people who live in hostels. They never have a cool, fun story of how they ended up living in a hostel. I get to my bunk bed, this girl comes out of nowhere, starts telling me her life story. She's like, I had an abortion. My parents kicked me out of the house. I became homeless, got addicted to heroin, and now I'm here hiding because there's some people looking for me, and I'm scared that if they find me, they're gonna kill me. And you? And I told her the truth. I was like, I came here to pursue my dream of becoming a famous, rich stand-up comedian. And she looks at me and goes, oh, no, I'm so sorry to hear that. You ever had a heroin addict look at you and go, you've made some bad decisions? When I first moved, like, my parents knew nothing about this country, nothing. But like any immigrant parent, as soon as I moved, they became an extra arm of the British intelligence. As soon as something would happen here, I'd get a phone call before the BBC even reports it. You know, my dad calls me, he's like, there's been a terrorist attack, 11 people were murdered. Are you okay? I'm like, there's 11 million people in this city. I'm fine. And he goes, don't go into central London, okay? Not even for your shows, it's just not safe, okay? And I have to be like, listen, Dad, I do open mic comedy in London. It's the safest place to be. There's no one there. At that point in my career, if a terrorist walked into one of my shows, he'd be like, I'm not killing myself for this. I worked all jobs. Like, I worked those immigrant jobs, hardcore jobs, cleaned kitchens, did all the terrible bar work. Anyone here had a really bad job?
Yeah.
Yes. What was your terrible job, Greece?
I worked at a pub here. It wasn't terrible, it was just standing, because you're not allowed to lean.
Because you're not allowed to lean.
No, if you can lean, you can clean, is what my boss said.
That sounds like slavery.
And if you can stand, you can walk in circles in an empty pub.
Okay, well, I feel like this is turned into a panel discussion. Worst job I've ever had is I used to sell paintball tickets on the street, commission only. Anyone ever seen those people? Real cunts, this guy. And it's a really difficult job because you have no salary. If you don't sell, you don't eat. I did that for 1.5 years, and I discovered a lot about people. You know what I discovered? People don't give a fuck about paintballing. No one has ever left their house thinking, I hope I find a paintball representative today. And it was tough. Like, I didn't even have enough money to put a deposit into a room, so I was living under the staircase of the paintball office. I know, for me, Harry Potter was a documentary. Because you have to be a specific type of person to do commission-only jobs. You have to be a positive cunt. Or as we call them in the business, Australians. I worked with all of these Australians, right? And eventually saved enough money, we all got a house together. And it was great. It was really nice. Because when you're away from home, your friends become your family. That's all you have. So we would do all the holidays together. We would do all of those things. And it was nice. It was like home away from home, family away from family. It was really nice. But the truth is, I'm doing comedy to 2 people. I'm not selling many paintball tickets. I'm broke. I'm eating spaghetti with spaghetti. I'm behind on my rent. And I'm like, I need to make money now. And someone tells me, well, you're pretty. You could be an escort. So I decided to become an escort. And I discovered that being an escort is very profitable if you're a woman, gay, or have a huge cock. So immediately I was like, what am I gonna do? Now, when you sign up for one of these agencies, what happens is they ask you a series of questions. One of the questions they ask you is, do you have any experience with pornography? Because a lot of retired porn actors actually become escorts. Now, I didn't know what to write, so I put down long-time viewer, first-time caller. And then the other thing they ask you is how much is your rate, how much you would charge, right? Now, the ladies in the house might not know this, but every guy, when he was young, with his group of friends, would play this game, which would be, how much would it be for you to suck a dick? And they would all go, 5 million pounds. Well, the going rate is 80. So I fill out this form, send a few photos. A few days later, I get this phone call from this old Russian madame. She's like, I had look at your profile. Attractive, like manly woman. But straight escort, no demand. Women do not pay for sex, okay? Straight escort, you do part-time. You do 1 date a month, 2 date part-time. And I'm like, what do you mean, part-time? Do you think I'm doing this because I need a fucking hobby? This was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. I thought about it ethically. I thought about it morally. I thought about it religiously. I thought about it in every single way. And in order to chase my dream, I decided to do it. And then someone tells me I might not have enough work. I'm not going to become a male escort just to end up as a struggling male escort. I'm going to have to find a second job just to support my prostitution. People are like, oh, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, well, I work in HR, but my real passion... Because I was actually really nervous about it. Because you know what's the worst part of having sex for money is what if someone asks for a refund? That haunted me. I'm like, what if I get hired and I can't deliver and this client gets pissed? She's like, well, I hired you to have fun. I wanted to have fun and you didn't provide that for me. So what are you going to do? Because I want to have fun. And I'm there panicking, going, do you like paintball? I remember being in my room, naked, in front of my mirror, talking to my dick, as I've done many times, but this time, it was a serious conversation. And so, I'm like, can you do this? You've been horny for me in the most inappropriate times of my life, but when the time comes, can you come? Because I was worried. I was like, what if I get there and it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? And then I looked in the mirror and I was like, but what if it does? It's true, you'll make a lot more money if you're gay. Now, I'm not gay, but I believe sexuality is a spectrum, and everybody's a little bit gay under the right circumstances. For a lot of people, those circumstances are prison. But I like to try new things, and a while back, I got invited to go to a private sex club. Now, I'd never been, so I was very nervous. I get in there, I'm at the bar, I meet a girl, we're having a drink, and she goes, would you like to go upstairs into one of the dark rooms? And I said, I would love to go upstairs into one of the dark rooms. So we go upstairs, we find a bed, and we start making out. Within 2 minutes of us making out, I realize an orgy has started to happen around us. I was so surprised that when I lifted my head, there was a cock next to my ear. Anyone here ever had a dick so close to your ear? It's whispering sweet nothings into it? Whenever I tell that story to my friends, they would always go, oh, was it a big cock? And I'm like, dude, any cock you're not expecting is a big fucking cock. Let me tell you something about dicks. If they catch you by surprise, it's the biggest one you've ever seen. And I'm there, and I'm looking around, and I realize everybody's fucking everybody. And I'm not fucking everybody because I'm not gay. But I am a very anxious person. So I started worrying, what if these people think I'm homophobic because I'm not participating? Anyone in the room ever been in a situation where you're so worried people might think you're homophobic that your brain just goes, quick, do something gay. Like I'm an undercover cop, you know, with something to prove. And I thought, well, if there was ever a time to experiment, so I took a deep breath and I looked at that dick right in the eye. But man, I really didn't want to suck it, you know? But I also didn't want to be rude. So I just... I kissed that dick like we're meeting for brunch, you know? And of course, I'm European, so I kissed it twice. But man, in that moment, I was like, thank God I'm not French, huh? At this stage, I've failed at being a prostitute, failed at selling paintball tickets. I'm doing comedy to 2 people. I'm super depressed, right? And I get super depressed. And, you know, my friends, my Australian family is like, oh, mate, we came here to have a good time. And you're bumming us out. with your depression. So we're gonna need you to move out. And I was like, I got nowhere to go. And they're like, yeah, we don't care. You gotta move out in 2 weeks. I was heartbroken. This is the biggest heartbreak of my life. I had to go home. And when I went back, I went to see this psychiatrist, and he goes, so tell me what happened. I was like, well, I was hanging out with these Australians. And he goes, let me stop you right there. I'm gonna prescribe antidepressants, okay? I'm like, Australian people are very happy people. No one can be that happy all the time, right? And he explained to me, he goes, what happened to you is that you felt you had to be happy for others all of the time. So you didn't process your own sadness. So now you actually have to be sad for a while in order to level up. So he also prescribed me a trip to Eastern Europe. And at that time, I did what anybody in my position would do. I decided to take shrooms with my friends to see if the answers would come to me. And so we take these shrooms, and we're walking around, and I see this girl, and it was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen in my life. Her eyes were changing color. I stopped on my tracks. I was like, this is the love of my life. This is what love feels like. I couldn't move. And my friends, they're going. And at one point, they're calling me. They're like, Andre, what are you doing? We got to go. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I've just met the future mother of my children. Remember this moment, because one day you will tell it at my wedding. And my friend was like, dude, you're talking to a traffic light. And without skipping a beat, my other friend goes, wow, your family loves lamps, huh? So what this trip did to me, it was very important. It was like, it made me almost look into the future. I know so many people that did everything that they were supposed to do in life. They did all of the right things, and they're miserable. They're so unhappy. They get to a point in their life, they're like, oh, I did this job, and I wanted to do this other thing, and I never did it. What if I'd taken a chance on that relationship? What if I'd moved to another country? What if I'd done this? They spend the rest of their lives living in what if. And I think that is the worst way to live, and I didn't want that for myself. So that little voice in my head was like, you gotta go back. So I moved again to London with newfound confidence, but no money. So I stayed in a girl's couch for a month and a half, and we ended up falling in love. And it was a beautiful relationship. We were what the other person needed. I needed a home, and she owned one. It was a match made in heaven. Now, she was Russian. We have any Russians in? Well, they're busy. What did you say? Did you say almost? Moldova? So why'd you say almost? Are they planning to invade? We were very different people, though. On our first official date, I was like, listen, my dream's to be a famous stand-up comedian. What's your dream? And she was like, they haven't told me yet. Some of you are tense. I can feel it. Don't worry. I'm only kidding. I love the Russians because they're listening. And her family lived back in Russia, right? But at one point, her brother came to visit. And he met me, and he looked at his sister, and it was like, why are you dating trans woman? Because he's a Russian man, you know what I mean? That's not what he expects. Like, we were at the house, we're hanging out, I'm trying to find something in common with him. At one point, my girlfriend, she came into the door, she goes, Andre, the washing machine's broken, it's leaking everywhere. Can you come into the kitchen and have a look? So I went into the kitchen, I had a look, and I agreed. And he's like, aren't you gonna fix that? And I'm like, no. He goes, what do you do when something in your house breaks? I usually move. And he gets his toolbox and he goes, I fix. Takes the whole washing machine apart, piece by piece. He's 2 hours there. The whole time I'm standing next to him, takes it apart, finds the problem, fixes the problem, puts it all back together. At the end, looks up at me. I don't even know why. The words that came out of my mouth were, God, it's nice to finally have a man in the house. Because he was like, well, how are you going to protect my sister? Right? Fair point. I'm not a fighter. I know that about me, right? I got to use different strategies. Someone breaks in, middle of the night. Girlfriend wakes me up. Andre, someone's in the house. I get out of bed, take my clothes off. She's like, you rock hard. And I'm like, yeah, it's part of the plan. Because I go downstairs, the burglar thinks he's got the element of surprise. I show up, he's like, this is a robbery. And I'm like, I've been expecting you. Because if there's one thing I know is that no man wants to fight another naked man with an erection, you know? There's no winners in that fight. It's a lose-lose situation. Even if he gets me in like a chokehold or something and I can't get out, and he's like, your girlfriend's next. I'm like, I gotta get out of here somehow. He's like choking me and I'm like, keep going, I'm gonna come. And he's like, come on, dude. What are you doing? Making it, you ruined the fight. We ended up breaking up and I had to pay my own rent without Russian oligarch money anymore. So I was very stressed. I was like, cost of living is very high, the energy crisis, the people crisis that this country was facing. I was so anxious, I had to go to the NHS, to the National Healthcare Service, and I had to go talk to a therapist. And I was like, listen, I am riddled with anxiety. I cannot sleep. And she goes, I think you have anxiety because you have a lack of self-esteem, a need for external validation, which can be a symptom for depression. And I'm like, how the fuck do I come here with one problem and I leave with 4? What's next? I come here with 3 and you tell me to kill myself? And she goes, don't make jokes like that. Because if me or one of the other healthcare professionals think you're a danger to yourself or others, we're legally forced to keep you in the hospital for 3 days for observation. And I was like, finally, free accommodation. I did the math. 3 days in the hospital, 9 free meals, that's 400 pounds. If I try to kill myself twice a month, guess who's going to Ibiza this summer? When people ask me, how can you afford to go to Ibiza? I'm a danger to myself and others, baby. Things very good at this point, right? Found a great community of friends in comedy. I was doing well, good gigs, getting paid. I felt very settled, and I thought, okay, this is the time. This is the time to make that leap for the dream to become a full-time comedian. And so I did. And a month after, pandemic happens. Totally broke. I have to go back again. I'm back home, totally lost. I have no idea what to do with my life. I got 0 skills. So I start looking for jobs that are available in my area. And I see that my town is looking for lifeguards. And so I thought, this is the perfect opportunity for me to become the homicide detective I've always thought I could be. So I do the course. I show up at a crime scene. They're like, what are you doing here? Turns out the majority of my authority is pissing on people, right? And we used to pee on people because of jellyfish. And a friend of mine once said, that jellyfish thing, it's an urban myth. And I'm like, dude, it's not. I did it for 2 years. I peed on literally hundreds of people. So I Googled it to show him, and he was right. It doesn't work at all. Not only does it not work, it's sexual assault. But people would come up to me, they've been at the beach, they'd say, I've been stung by a jellyfish, and I would say, I need to pee on it. And everybody would go, yep. I've got no follow-up questions. And so we used to go to this little wooden shack, small wooden shack, and people would say, oh, I've been stung here. And I would start peeing on it. Now, I don't know if you've ever peed on somebody, but it's a long minute. And every single time I did this, midway through me peeing on them, they would turn around and go, are you sure this works? And I'm like, trust me, I'm a lifeguard. Ironically, the country I always wanted to leave was then the country who gave me my success. I had a very successful podcast, had this big sort of comedy format, and I got to open for all these amazing comedians, very famous comedians from all over the world. And one time, I got to open for this comedian called Russell Peters. And then after that, I told him this exact story I've just told you. And he goes, man, that is a hell of a journey you've been on. Are your parents here tonight? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, bring your dad backstage. He brings my dad backstage and he says, listen, I think your son is real persistent. He's a go-getter. And I think he's going to go far in this business. And after that, me and my dad go for a meal. And my dad says, I want you to know that I never wanted you to not chase your dreams. I just thought you'd fail. But put yourself in my shoes. What you did makes no sense at all. At 19, you leave to go to America to do what? To be mentioned in the same sentence as Cork? That's not a thing. And you end up living in a car. And then you come back and you leave again and you go to London and I call you, how are things going? Do you live in a car? And I'm like, don't be silly. I live under a staircase. But don't worry, I'm about to become a prostitute. But only part-time because we are Catholic. And so he asks, why do you keep going? Why are you so persistent? And I told him, you know, I've always had this little voice in my head. And he's like, what voice? Are you dating the voice? And I said, no, Dad, like, I'm not schizophrenic. The difference between schizophrenia and perseverance is ticket sales. And so my dad asks me, are you going to stay? Are you going to stay now? And I had everything to stay. I could have a great life, but I think I'd be miserable. It was just never what I wanted. And I would feel like I'd never achieved what I had set out to achieve. But in that moment that we're having a nice conversation, I felt I could share with him. And I told him, I've always wanted to go to this arts festival. It's called the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Now, this is the biggest arts festival in the world, but it's like, I don't know, maybe 3,000, 4,000 shows, people. And this festival could change the lives of 1% of people that go there. The 99 other percent leave broken financially and emotionally. So it was a big gamble. Essentially, if I had to go, I had to put all my savings into this, give up my apartment, say no to all the opportunities that I had. For the first time in my life, I was stable, but I was scared. I was like, what if I give all of this up and I go there? And what if it doesn't work? And then for the first time, after all of these years, my dad says, but what if it does? And I went, didn't change my life. Didn't change my life. The show went great. I got great reviews. The coolest thing that happened is I got invited to an event hosted by the president of Portugal. And he goes and he shakes my hand, takes the photo, and he goes, thank you for your contribution for Portuguese culture. And I'm like, all I did is say that the French people have made Al Pacino gay. That's my contribution. And it gave me the confidence to come back to London. To come to London with the feeling that I had something. I had a show, and I felt good. I didn't let the city break me. Like tonight, I'm here filming my first comedy special. It's my win, you know? Now, guys, there's one final surprise. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you all so much for coming. Very much.
Estamos muito felizes com esta notícia que acaba de chegar. Portugal lidera pelo 4º ano consecutivo na exportação de cortiça. Mas não é só na cortiça que estamos a exportar, não é, Inês?
É verdade, Zé. Também Portugal está a exportar na comédia no nome, atenção, André De Freitas. Uma promessa no humor internacional. Inclusive, já esteve várias vezes no Festival Fringe em Edimburgo. E o André já é considerado por muitos a cortiça portuguesa na comédia.
Incrível. A cortiça serve para muita coisa, tal como o André.
Sem dúvida. Agora vamos ao trânsito?
Vamos ao trânsito.
I have to say, my first time doing stand-up in the big city, land of dreams, Los Angeles, Hollywood.